Please stay out of
Starting
the.
in 2 minutes. We're already live.
Please stay out of the frame of the camera. The camera is situated at the middle of the room.
Say hi to that camera.
Thanks, Shashwat.
You're about to be famous.
Please stop interrupting. Please.
Final, last and only semi-final. And the first one, and doesn't matter right now. So, security supersedes privacy and freedom. We had to think a lot for this topic. It's actually been on my mind for a very, very long time. It has its roots in legislation, in actual human values. It also has its roots in history as well, where people value security more than privacy and they lose their freedom as a result. And some people support freedom, but half time me really. And then they lose their security as a result of it. It happens both ways. So this debate will, I'm hoping it will address both sides of the issue, and I'm hoping to see some nice fireworks today. There's a lot of historical evidence, there's a lot of legal aspects to this that both teams can bring up. I'm hoping to see a very good debate right now.
Hey guys, I'm the Vice President, Eastman Sheikh. I will be moderating this debate. I request the audience to please listen to me, because I have the power to kick you out of the room. Okay? Alright. I request the speakers of the proposition and opposition to occupy their seats. Proposition goes here. Opposition goes here. I'll explain the debate format once more, because new audience keeps coming, right? They have to be on track. Right. So these guys, the proposition, they'll give their opening statement. That's for 1 minute. After they're done, they have to do the same. Opening statement, 1 minute. Then, 5 minutes, main speech. These guys go first, the proposition, then the opposition. 5 minutes, main speech. After the main speech, from both sides, we go into a break to prepare for a round of rebuttals. The rebuttals, opposition has the advantage of asking first. They'll ask a question, proposition has to reply. Opposition can choose to follow up. And, I'll regulate what goes on there. We'll have two to three rounds of rebuttals, and then concluding statements. These guys, 2 minutes. These guys, 2 minutes. And do remember what they're saying. If you find something odd, ask in the audience questions at the end. We will highly appreciate that. So, let's begin the debate, yeah. Position to give their opening statement.
Hello everybody. Freedom is good, but security is better. The term privacy is frequently used in ordinary languages such as philosophical context, political context, legal discussions. Yet there is no single definitive meaning to it, or anything that you can date back to historical context. It revolves around the elimination of all types of coercions, that is security, from threat, from violence, from terrorism, and also safeguards people on their daily life basis. Individuality increases freedom, but does at the expense of security. It is almost self-contradictory for the opposition to argue for freedom while ignoring the most important aspect, that is, security is a forgotten freedom, that is, freedom from fear. Thank you.
Thank you, proposition. Opposition? Right. Opposition, you may give your opening statement.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Aditya Rajesh from the Order of the White Lotus. Implicit in the statement is the idea that we cannot have security with privacy and freedom. We, the opposition, argue on the side of the individual, for the individual's right to privacy and the individual's right to freedom. We believe that these fundamental rights are sacrosanct and are the cornerstone of every healthy and functioning society, and under no circumstances should these values ever be violated. To put these values secondary to security is to put the cart before the horse. Privacy comes from the Latin word privatus, which means set apart from what is public, that which is personal and not of the state. At its core, privacy grants individuals the power to decide when, where, and how, and to what extent their personal information can be shared with others. And this is not too different from the idea of freedom. These two concepts are symbiotic and cannot exist in isolation of the other. Infringements on the right to privacy prevent an individual from exercising their freedom of expression.
Thank you, Speaker. You may have a seat. I request the proposition to give their main speech.
Hello. Okay. Security is the cornerstone of a stable society. It encompasses protection from threats, cyber threats, external aggression, and also terrorism. It ensures our safety of our loved ones, and also the safety of our surrounding communities. Without security, our cherished values of life, happiness, liberty are all in jeopardy. In times of crisis, such as natural calamities or pandemics, the need for security becomes even more evident. It is essential to maintain order, distribute resources, and also protect the public health. Security measures, while potentially encroaching on individual freedom temporarily, are indispensable for greater good and also the survival of the society itself. Moreover, security often acts as a prerequisite for the enjoyment of individual freedom. Just imagine a society that is plagued by crime or is under a terrorist attack. In such environment, individuals are understandably reluctant to exercise their freedoms. While we value our privacy as a safeguard against government intrusion, it is crucial to recognize that privacy must yield to the collective need of security. Security measures, when implemented, will prevent and also respond to threats effectively. When a crime is committed or a threat to national security arises, it is our collective responsibility to make sure that the responsible people are held accountable. Furthermore, security measures need not be incompatible to privacy and freedom. Legal frameworks, checks and balances, independent oversights, etc. ensure that security measures are implemented within the bounds of law and also respecting the freedom and privacy of individuals. It is entirely possible to strike a balance that preserves our values while safeguarding the privacy of individuals. In some cases, we may argue that it is better to allow limited intrusions into privacy to apprehend dangerous criminals and also prevent catastrophic events. This may involve targeted surveillance, intelligence sharing, or border controls. These measures, when proportionate and subject to scrutiny, can enhance security without turning the society into a surveillance state. Consider the response to a public health crisis, example the COVID-19 pandemic. Governments all around the world, and also the government of India, implemented contact tracing, quarantine measures, and also travel restrictions to curb the spread of the virus. These measures, while intruding on personal privacy and freedom, were crucial in saving many lives and also controlling the virus transmission. Also, the Fourth Amendment in the US Constitution states that the right of people to be secure in their houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches should not be violated. This plays a crucial role in protecting citizens from unwarranted government intrusion into private lives. Let us also not forget the importance of economic stability in importance of economic stability. Security is very essential for businesses to thrive and also the individuals to prosper. An insecure environment, whether due to high crime rates or external threats, can deter investments, hinder economic growth, and ultimately undermine our quality of life. Thank you.
Ask you to give your main speech.
A very good afternoon to the lovely audience, the moderator, and the distinguished judges. Why do we need privacy? Privacy and freedom, particularly freedom of expression, are two sides of the same coin. Each are essential prerequisite to the enjoyment of the other. To freely form and impart one's political, religious, and ethnical beliefs, one needs an autonomous, private space free from interference from the state, private sector, or other citizens. And it's important to any healthy society that cannot be understated. This cannot be understated. This entire matter can be very simply explained. The more someone knows about us, the more they can influence us. Consider the case of a government, let's say a democratic one at that. These governments possess a certain power, a power that arises as a result of knowing personal details of someone. This power undermines that which is vital for democracy, the ability to vote or protest anonymously without the fear of repercussions, speak our minds, or read what we are curious about. Privacy is important because it gives power to the people. Privacy is a public good, and defending it is our civic duty. Should the government truly have the power to invade one's privacy, what is that restricts them from misusing this power? In the hands of the government, security is a weapon in their armory. A weapon that is used to justify their gross missteppings. A weapon that is more often than not used to justify the exploitation of the ability vested in them to spy on its citizens. We have seen all too often how too much power consolidated in too few hands leads to corruption. What is it that holds them accountable for these actions? People who do not have your best interests at heart will try and exploit your data to further their own agenda. Take into consideration the Sedition Act in India. This law essentially states that if an individual in any way or form excites or allegedly excites disaffection, hatred, or contempt towards the government, is imprisoned for life and fined. So, this law was introduced by the British during the colonial rule in 1870s. Yet, the law still exists in India. Still in existence with revisions, yet it exists and is exploited in various forms. Under the title of Offences Against the State, the reports between 2014 and 2016 showed a total of 179 arrests of sedition, yet only 2 were convicted. 70% of cases were later on filled with no charge in the sheet. This is a pattern of a larger pattern of intimidation of journalists and protesters. Here is another incident which reciprocates the idea of context of infringement of privacy. In Kashmir, 3 Kashmiri girls were jailed for 6 months just because they celebrated the fact that Pakistan won over India under the law of sedition and Section 66A, cyber terrorism. Allegedly, they sent WhatsApp messages celebrating this India's loss in cricket. The question to be asked here is, how did the prosecution gain access to end-to-end encrypted WhatsApp messages? Does this mean all our private conversations through WhatsApp or any other secure form of communication is subject to scrutiny by those in authority? In conclusion, privacy and freedom are 2 sides of the same coin. They are quintessential and inviolable. When those in authoritative positions hold too much power, it can corrupt. This corruption could be embodied in various infringements of privacy and freedom, thus bringing about the collapse of democracy and jeopardizing the fabric of society as we know it. Thank you.
Thank you, opposition. Now we'll be taking a 5-minute break. Please return at 1:35. All right. We will be now resuming the debate with rebuttals. I ask the proposition and opposition to get back in their seats. Audience, we are now resuming the debate. Opposition, please take your seats. So rebuttals aren't really timed, so you can just go off. Yeah, it's up on the moderator's discretion. Right? Okay, 1:55. You can go on for 20 minutes. All right. Right. I'll sit in the back.
Yeah, you are in front.
Yeah, you're in front.
Okay, let's start our rounds of rebuttals. I ask the opposition to ask a question, put forward the rebuttal in the form of a question. I also ask the audience to please be quiet. Respect the speaker. Opposition, you may proceed.
Yeah. So, the proposition has mentioned that when security supersedes privacy and freedom, one of their points was it increases security, like cyber security. They'll reduce the cyber threats. Can you please expand on that?
Opposition for that, there are data protection laws, especially Article 21 in India, that safeguard your life, your personal information. Also, in case Hyderabad is attacked at this point, do you want your browser history to be safer, or do you want to live at this point?
Opposition, would you like to follow up? Audience, please, I know it was funny, but please maintain decorum. Opposition, please go on.
The proposition has mentioned if the government or some authority takes over the security of every cyber thing. My question is, yeah, it is true. Our cyber thing will be secure. But then, what if the government itself uses the authority and manipulates? What if it violates our security of cyber security? What if the government shifts the blame from one person to another in case of cyber threats and all to safeguard a higher official? Who is holding the government accountable in case of cyber security when they have the authority?
Proposition, would you like a clarification?
Yeah, please, if they could repeat the question, a shorter way.
Opposition, I must ask you to repeat your question in a more concise manner. Sorry?
My question was, if the government or any other corporation has the authority over cyber security, who holds them accountable for, like, how do we know that they will not manipulate, they will not use their power to manipulate and restrict our cyber things?
Alright, speaker, you may take a seat. What the opposition is trying to say is that if the government is in charge of safeguarding the security of certain high-level officials, how can we trust the government to safeguard the interests of the people? Essentially. One at a time, please.
As I mentioned in my main speech, government has legal frameworks, checks and balances, and also independent oversights to also, they have all of these only to protect their individual rights. And also, there is Freedom to Information Act passed which grants citizens the right to government information, ensuring they respect your own privacy. Yeah.
Only one speaker at a time. Alright, proposition, you may take a seat.
Opposition, would you like to follow up?
Opposition, would you like to follow up? I got confused. Apologies from the moderator. Long day. Please proceed.
You mentioned certain, internal regulatory bodies that monitor the, the data protection. So the government has access and they can spy on its citizens, correct? And there are certain internal bodies that regulate this. Sure, that all sounds good on paper. Consider this. These internal mechanisms and these courts that authorize the espionage on its citizens, don't they have government people manning them? Aren't these standards set by the government? So this judging criteria, do you think it would be fair when you're judging your own performance? I'm pretty sure you're going to inflate it, aren't you? Thank you.
Proposition, please present your response.
It wasn't a question, technically.
Wait,
I'll just
never mind.
Seeing that the rebuttal has not been placed in the form of a
Seeing that the rebuttal was not in the form of question, we will now move on to the next round. No reply. I was trying to do that, but oh well. Proposition, you may ask, you may put forward a rebuttal in the form of a question to the opposition. Right now, yeah.
Okay. My question to the opposition is, in situations of immediate threats to public safety, like terrorist attack, can privacy and freedom realistically take precedence over security without risking people's lives?
Opposition, please present your response.
Privacy is an essential aspect of individual autonomy. A society can only exist as long as its pillars are upheld. The pillars of privacy and freedom. As I mentioned before, privacy and freedom are in a symbiotic relationship. By undermining privacy and freedom, what society are you trying to protect again?
Proposition, would you like to follow up?
Recording you, that sounds very good on paper, but in case you're attacked, they come up to your house, they show up, they shoot you with guns. Do you really want to say, oh, my phone is more important, I can die, but my phone can live?
Seeing that wasn't a question, wait, was that a question?
What is the point? He ended with a question.
Okay. Opposition, please respond. I asked both the sides to frame your questions more concisely.
This is clearly a distraction from the main idea. The main premise of this topic is, does security supersede privacy and freedom? Not whether people show up with guns and whether we value our phones.
Proposition, would you like to follow up?
What is so important that you're trying to protect? If you have nothing such like that, do you have nuclear codes to protect? No, I do not think so. Then what is so important that you think privacy is important in front of a state that protects you every day? The state that gives you security. Only because you have security, you're able to demand freedom and privacy. If you did not have security, those ideas would not come to your mind.
Opposition, would you like to respond? I must remind both the sides, when the moderator asks you, please reply yes or no.
I would like to respond.
Right. Please go ahead.
As I've stated multiple times, a society cannot exist unless you have privacy and freedom. And once again, restating it. Without a society, what are you trying to protect? Privacy and freedom are essential. These are the cornerstones and these are sacrosanct and these are inviolable. A democracy cannot exist unless a person is able to vote according to their beliefs without undue pressure. Unless they are able to protest anonymously without fear of repercussions. Unless they have the freedom to associate, speak their minds and read and learn about whatever they wish to do.
Alright, we will end this round of rebuttals. We'll move on to the next one. So the format switches, right? The proposition will give their rebuttal in the form of a question.
My question is, if you have too much freedom and you have anarchy and mob rule that compromises national security, which compromises freedom and privacy, where do you draw a line?
Opposition, please respond.
Could I request clarification as to what exactly the proposition means?
Proposition, please clarify your question, let's summarize it.
If you have too much freedom and you also have anarchy and mob rule that compromises the national security, where do you draw a line between them?
Alright, what the proposition is trying to ask, the government has to enforce security, right? National security. What is the line where we call it that it's superseding people's freedoms? At what point do you draw the line?
Yes.
Proposition, please.
Taking a hypothetical example, the Purge movies, you had too much freedom and too much privacy and people started killing each other. That was a mob rule and that was anarchy. In situations like this, ideally it has never happened because there is security. In situations like that, where do you draw the line for something where privacy, freedom and all of this cease to exist?
Opposition, please present your response.
The proposition seems to be of the opinion that it is security that prevented the Purge movies from enacting in real life. I'd like to say common sense would maybe take precedence before that, but that is diverging. Once again, as I've stated multiple times before, privacy and freedom are the cornerstones of a society. What the premise of the argument so far, the premise of the debate has been, is whether security should supersede privacy and freedom. Not that we require anarchy, not that we require no form of government. A government must exist, but a government that respects the fundamental values of privacy and freedom. Thank you.
Proposition, would you like to follow up?
The term freedom is contradictory and difficult to apply in specific realities. In this sense, the question posed are, what freedom, freedom from whom, how much freedom and freedom for what purpose and to do what?
Opposition, would you like to respond? And again, please say yes or no.
Sorry?
This is still the both.
Freedom in our context was the freedom of expression. That is the first and foremost, most important value. In fact, it's the value of debate society right here. Thanks to President Preetham Gevita. Thank you very much. But yes, freedom of expression. It is at the root of all freedoms. When you have the right to express yourself, you can stand up for yourself. You can ask for the rights that you need. You can demand for the values, the resources that you require. So the freedom that in question here is the freedom of expression.
Proposition, would you like to follow up?
Technically, what is the question? If you could print as a-
No, this is the propositions round, so you can ask another question, I'll allow it. That's all? Alright, seeing as the proposition has no question, we'll move on to the next round. Opposition, you may place a rebuttal in the form of a question.
It was stated earlier by the proposition that people would be happy in their homes with the assistance of security by the government. But who would be happy with a lot of security where the government has key to your house, where they can infiltrate your house? Who would be happy to know that people are spying on you? People have eyes on you. You would be happy? Who would be happy?
Proposition, please respond.
Theoretically, nobody has the key to your house. The government, as you mentioned, some girls in Kashmir were jailed because they sent WhatsApp messages. Considering Kashmir is a war zone, what if they were trying to do espionage, send messages in secret codes? That happens a lot of time. They use game chat conversations which are not regulated, and that's where security comes. As you said, is the cornerstone, in my opinion. Security is important because those conversations are not regulated. Thank you.
Opposition, would you like to follow up?
Yes.
Alright, go ahead.
We did not just state that 3 Kashmiri girls were imprisoned. We have evidence backing that after 6 months of the imprisonment, they were released with no charges. It was wrong, they were wrongly accused. So, I guess that answers your question of espionage. They were not trying to espionage, they were just supporting their favorite cricket team.
Proposition, would you like to follow up on that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I believe the opposition is confused how espionage works. It's not science. There is no rules and regulation. You can only use trial and error method. It might have been a situational error. They were apologized. They were given monetary compensations. So I believe the opposition needs to understand how things of national security work, especially in case of terrorism, espionage, and spycraft.
All right, opposition. You may give a final response as we're running short on time.
Sure. The proposition called this act of arresting 3 innocent Kashmiri girls a process of trial and error. Are you truly willing to give up 6 months of your life, all in the name of a so-called trial and error practiced by the government? I'm not too sure anybody would be willing to do that. Maybe to run away from Keaton, but that's a different matter. Right. So the main point here is that this is it's a pattern of a larger. It's part of a larger pattern where the governments around the world have been suppressing the people. It is, for example, the BBC and various other international news stations have reported how India has been increasingly using the so-called Sedition Act. For example, there were approximately 170 cases, 179 cases, my bad, it's worse than I thought. 179 arrests made, 179 arrests, but only 2 convictions. So all these people have been arrested and no charges filed, no charge sheets filled, and no actual convictions. So what do we see here? We see a pattern of journalists, of free speech, and of essential human values, privacy and freedom being undermined. Thank you.
Thank you, opposition. With that, we will be concluding the rebuttals as we're short on time. I'll ask the proposition to give their 2-minute closing statement.
Without a sense of security or protection, there will be chaos because some people cannot handle so much power into their hands, which is why security is important. Security keeps you safe from potential threats. The opposition starts to understand that, they will look back at this debate and regret the stance that they took. It's essentially the trolley problem. You are saving millions of people. Sometimes you are supposed to make the difficult choice. Because in life, you cannot save everybody. It is never possible. Every situation has an outcome where someone is harmed. So the best you can do at a very human level is save some people. At best, the most people. That is why security exists. That is why you are at your home. You are able to come to Geetam every day, look at things, because you have security. You are not under a rule where you're like, oh, this does not happen. That security is what allows you to make free speech decisions, as the opposition kept asking. This is your free speech. To end, I would like to quote Brutus. Not that I loved Caesar less, but I loved Rome more. Thank you.
Opposition, you may present your closing statement.
To weigh security more than privacy and freedom is counterintuitive. Sure, you save many more lives, but at the cost of whom? Okay, so in this scenario, as put forward by the proposition, you are sacrificing a few. But what is at stake here is creating a culture where you keep on suppressing the minority, you keep on suppressing journalists, you keep on suppressing freedom of speech. The matter is not about who to save at the moment. The matter is about whether privacy and freedom supersede security or not. It is to place privacy and freedom, to place security over privacy and freedom is beyond counterintuitive. It is analogous to putting the cart before the horse. As we've stated earlier, a healthy society cannot exist without the core pillars of privacy and freedom. To think and act otherwise is nothing but an abominable crime against humanity. For what good is a cart if it is not attached to a horse that represents the respect for the fundamental rights of man? Thank you.
Alright, good speeches everyone. Now the floor will be open to audience questions. Does anybody have any questions? Show of hands. You guys not listen?
No kingship in the audience.
Come on guys, think about it. Privacy. Do you want the government to take away your privacy? Or do you want the government to?
Objection leading.
You have a question?
So when I have a question.
Oh yeah. We're also open to opinions. Questions and opinions.
About the topic.
Has a question.
Okay, so I will, whoever wants to answer can answer proposition or opposition. I would like to elaborate on what Kinshuk said. What is so private in your phone that, I think it's a question to the opposition. What is so private in your phone that you need to hide it from the whole government? And if you feel the need to hide something from the whole nation, don't you think that's the whole point of the security that they are trying to do?
Implicit in your question is an idea that people do not have anything to hide unless they're bad. And I think this is like the first step of a series of wrong thoughts. Because the moment you start thinking like this, you end up going down a route, a very, very dark rabbit hole. I will start with talking about, say, this. You end up creating a culture where ideas are suppressed, where the freedom of expression is no longer valued. And as I've stated before, ideas and data especially can be used against you. The government can create campaigns specifically targeting certain sections to vote in different ways, to affect the voting patterns of certain constituencies. And all of this shows clearly how privacy and security clearly supersede privacy and freedom, clearly supersede security.
Alright, thank you for your answer.
I'm not satisfied with the answer he gave. We don't have time to follow up.
Alright.
I'm sorry, could I follow up?
No. Does anybody have any questions to the proposition?
Judge.
As the audience has no questions, we'll move on to the judge questions.
There's a simple scenario to which I'd like your comment on. It's not strictly a question per se. So when you imagine the road, right, you are obligated, of course, legally even, to not break the signs or not even run a person over. The same follows for animals even. So the road is safer if you follow these rules, but is it practical that way? What about an ambulance? What if someone's life is on the line? And additionally, exactly how much of the freedom is being suppressed here, and exactly how safer are you making the road? Because the people on the road are people that are licensed to drive. So exactly how secure are you making it by following these rules to the T? That is if you actually are. So bring a dimension of practicality as well as, hold your stance.
Firstly, I would like to clarify, I'm not a literature or a philosophy student, but coming to the proper analogy that you just gave, there are specific laws which dictate that an ambulance can go faster and a path has to be cleared for them because that is a special condition. But in most cases, following the speed limit is best for everybody. Taking a very real example, the limit on ORR used to be around, I think, 50 kmph or 60, around like that. But it got reduced because there were more accidents happening. People did not follow that particular speed limit. They kept going even higher. So the human mentality is where you set the baseline, the threshold. People always tend to go higher. Even in the Indian context, if you ask somebody to arrive by 2:30, they mostly come by 2:40. So you ask them to come by 2 o'clock so that they come by 2:30. That is a concept of security which saves you. So that is the answer to the analogy. I believe that you will be satisfied with that.
I'm not.
Neither am I.
Okay, so my question would be a common but holding two different states. Donald Trump using Cambridge Analytica in 2014 or between, so during that 2016 elections, he manipulated data that could be shown and all the ads to be shown to every single user in USA, the one who could vote. And by that way, he manipulated votes of thousands of Americans. Question to proposition. In such a case, where security can be exploited, secure measures are exploited against the citizens who are to be protected by the higher bodies holding the authority. What do you think is in such a case? And the same question to opposition is, if you do not hold the reins and do not secure the data that is available, and you give over freedom to everyone, what would the effects be?
Since the question is to both proposition and opposition,
I would like the proposition to start first.
yeah, let the proposition go first. Opposition, please remember the question.
Taking into account that very particular situation where you got manipulated, I think there are two ways to look at it. Firstly is bodily harm that can come from a lot of situations. The second one is the compromise of security. Here only the second part of that context matters. Your security might have been compromised because that information got leaked, but no bodily harm came from it. In a very ethical context, that might be okay, but in a law context, it is not. Taking that particular situation into account, Donald Trump was arrested. His trial has been undergoing multiple times on multiple charges because there were laws to safeguard your protective identity, your security. Because those laws exist in the world, Donald Trump was charged. Yes, at that immediate moment, that transgression was not identified, but as soon as it was put under trial, and I believe the trial is still going on. I do not read newspaper very often, but I believe it is still going on.
Opposition, you may reply, respond to Sanad's question.
You are most definitely right in that protecting data is of utmost importance. In fact, it is the very central core of our argument, right? You cannot trust any authority, any institution, any government body, any government institution with so much power. To give any institution this much power, the power to exploit information, the power to collect information and then use it, is absolutely outrageous. So as the judge has very rightly said, to give any authority this much power is most definitely going to lead to corruption. As we've seen over here, Donald Trump had access to all this data through the use of Cambridge Analytica, a large US-based think tank. They were able to manipulate US voters by using their social media feeds. So yes, that is true. Giving too much power to any one authority will lead to disaster. It will lead to corruption and eventually undermining are the core values of any healthy society, any healthy functioning society of privacy and freedom.
Alright, with that, we will conclude the audience questions and the debate. Thank you everyone for coming, and now I request the speakers, moderator, and judges to come for a picture.
Mentors as well.
Mentors as well. Sorry.